Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, everyone is having a great time wherever they are, and I know that there's the .NET conference happening soon. My name is Samele Zadigo, and I am a Microsoft Cloud Advocate for the Power Platform, and I am here with Khomolemo Muhapi, who would like to also introduce himself for this amazing session that we actually have for you guys. Khomo, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. It is quite late where we are, but I'm feeling good anyway. My name is Homo, and I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft, focused on Power Apps and Fusion development. I am really excited to be here as we dive deep into the various aspects of building a Power App with real business impact. Yeah, so as I said, it is quite late. However, Someleze and I would never pass up on a chance to speak about the amazing Power Platform. Isn't that right?
Yeah, definitely. And I am pretty sure what we have today, we just want to quickly talk about what we actually liked from the Microsoft Ignite announcements about the Power Platform. So, Homo, would you like to share some of your favorite announcements around that?
Yeah, sure. Ignite was really cool, and we had a lot of feature updates. However, I liked the ones which really try to push Fusion teams to be more collaborative and productive. And a way of doing that is by way of Power Apps ideas, which is now GA. This allows you to easily write a Power FX formula using natural language. We often spent a long time figuring out how to combine multiple formulas to achieve something. And now we can eliminate all that time by just explaining that formula in English, and the AI assisted tool will generate the correct formula to use. So if you wanted to sort an account table by account name, or you could just you could just type sort the table by the account name, and Power Apps ideas will give you that correct formula. So to me, anything that has to do with democratizing AI for the benefit of Power Platform users, both in the background and the foreground, that's really just a win for me. How about you? What were some of your favorite features?
Yeah, before I can actually get into that, what you just mentioned is actually amazing. And I'm pretty sure there's something similar for Power Automate as well. I don't want to be start spoiling everything around Power Automate. We're here to talk about Power Apps. So if you want to know more about what Power Automate has in store for you with a similar feature, you can go find that out by going to make.powerautomate.com. But yeah, Homelemo, with what you just actually explained and just shared with us, it's actually a great idea to have ideas within your Power Apps, and you can just use your natural language in terms of what you actually want your app to do. So, for my part, in terms of what my favorite announcement was at Microsoft Ignite, this was also actually announced during the Power Platform conference that was happening sometime a few months ago. So, my favorite announcement was actually around co-authoring apps within Power Apps. It's been a very long time where people were saying, okay, Power Apps is a cool tool, but how can we actually work together as developers and work on the same app, but also different screens and adding different components so that we can push productivity forward and we can push for an efficient development of our app solution. So co-authoring feature within Power Apps is now available for you guys to actually use so that you can be able to work on a Power App for you and with your friend or even with your colleague so that you can be able to make those wonderful changes that you want to make within your team to push collaboration and productivity together. But that's not what we're really here for today. We actually have a specific Learn Live session for you that is centered around two Learn modules of designing and making your Power App like a pro. So, Homo, would you like to introduce our moderator to us for today?
Sure. Today we have Bruno as well as Jason and a few others in the background. These are all experts in the field, and they will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. in the chat. They will be behind the scenes for most of the show, running everything and telling us if we ever mess up. So please, let's all say hi to all of the mods in chat and let them know that we appreciate them being here. Today's Learn Live session is a bit different from the rest, as we are going to be covering two Learn modules instead of the usual one. These two modules are Design Your App Like a Pro and Make Your App Like a Pro. These two modules are part of the Think Like a Maker series, which is on Microsoft Learn, our learning platform. And this series highlights, as I've said earlier, the various aspects of building a Power App with real business impact, looking at the entire app developer process and guiding you through the key choices that define how your Power App will function from beginning to end.
Wonderful. I can't really wait to actually see what we actually have for this specific session. And for me, it's a first in any time to actually have a Learn Live session that has two Learn modules that are being covered today. And I'm actually looking forward to have fun today and showcase alongside Homo how you can actually go through and do about the Think Like a Maker series within the Power Platform. Obviously, we are just looking at those two learning modules. Again, for this session, we are live, so we would like for you guys to interact with us within the chat box so that you can ask questions if you have any questions on the chat, or you can say hi to Bruno and all of the other moderators, just like Homer had mentioned earlier on, so that you can see that this session is actually live and we are welcoming your specific questions around that. Right, enough chit chat about the session being interactive. We need to start looking at how we can design our applications like professionals. So today, what we're looking at is how we can be able to analyze the different tasks to be done when using an application, prepare the specifications and designs of your application, and decide what the user experience will be. Obviously, at the end of this specific segment for the design your app like a pro, you'll be able to complete those learning objectives for you. But before we actually do that, Homo, what do we actually have in store first?
Right. With those learning objectives in mind, let's dig into our first unit here. Design your data structure. Now, preferably before you get to that point, you would have done a number of things that I'm just going to rattle off here. Firstly, you should have identified the business problem that you wanted to solve. You would then go on to analyze the current business process. What is it that we're doing now, and how can I improve that with Power Apps? So now that we've identified the problem, analyzed it, and figured out how to optimize it, then we can think about designing the actual data structure, which starts at firstly understanding where the data is stored. Rarely would you start an app with no existing data. And because more often than not, you would be importing existing data into your app from wherever that data is hosted. Maybe the data you're working with is years old and is accessed by users who only need to access the most recent values of data. In that case, it would benefit you to perform some data cleaning before users can actually access that data. Cleaning old data can include can include the removal of duplicate records, inaccurate records, and other data that is not needed in a new app. This is also a good time to review the contents of legacy fields and remove any that are rarely used. The data cleanup process won't only help you to identify irrelevant data, it will also allow you to identify data storage capacity. Because one of the main setbacks that businesses face when deploying Power Apps is exceeding storage. Now that you've found and organized the required data, the next step would be to then see how you can integrate with existing systems and apps that people already use. Apps that are created with Power Apps have two main ways to integrate with existing data. The first being a connector, which is a feature in Power Apps where you can connect to various systems and sources such as SharePoint, SQL Server, or Office 365, and directly retrieve data from them or save data to them. So let's take SharePoint as a data source. SharePoint holds data that can be brought into your app by creating a connection, and then that connection is only made possible by way of a connector. Then the second way to integrate data is a data flow. A data flow is a feature in which Power Apps where you can extract, transform, and load data from another system right into Microsoft Dataverse. Unlike a connector, a data flow will fetch data in a scheduled batch. Instead of retrieving the data as it is from the data source, you can also then use Power Query to manipulate, cleanse, and transform data before you store it to the target storage. Both of these methods depend on your specific use case and how the data needs to be handled. So be mindful of that. With your data structure out of the way, let's see how you can determine which type of app to actually make. And for that, let's hear from Someleze.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Obviously, just like Homer had mentioned, you need to go through all of those steps and processes to actually look at the kind of data that you already have. And then once you figure that out in that specific aspect, you need to determine which type of app to make. And within Power Apps, you actually have two options. You can actually build an app which is a model driven app, or you can build canvas apps. And normally, when I explain to people what model driven apps are and canvas apps are, I actually just look at the difference between the two. Again, I may be biased in this case, hopefully, everyone else is. With Canvas apps, you have full control of your interface and the controls that you actually add within your specific application. Whereas with model driven apps, it actually you just need to specify where your data is going to, specify which forms are, because you don't necessarily need to worry about the interface and all of those things. Model driven apps actually require a Microsoft Dataverse database, and they are built on top of the data that's modeled in that database environment. Views and detail screens, obviously, for model driven apps are based on the data structure, and as a result, they offer users a more consistent appearance and behavior from one screen to the next without requiring much effort from the app creator. And in this case, model driven apps are beneficial for scenarios where business logic is complex, such as when you look at sophisticated data models, business process management, tracking activities that are associated with data. Conversely, you can actually build Canvas apps with or without a Dataverse database. And like I mentioned, Canvas apps use connectors to access data and services, and they start with a blank screen where you actually have full control of your user interface and what kinds of controls you actually want to be on that user interface. So again, with me just saying that and giving you a small explanation between the two options that you have, when you want to build your application, hopefully you're not as biased as me, but you need to understand which kind of app or which type of app to make based off of your data. And right after that, what's your next step? So in this case, when you determine which type of app to make, whether is it a model driven app or is it a canvas apps, it actually means that you need to determine the placement of your logic. And Homelemo, would you just care to explain to us on how we can actually do this in terms of the placement of the logic? Obviously, we looked at how you can determine the type of app to make.
Yeah, sure. Because on the back of learning about those two types of power apps, trying to determine the type of app to make and the placement of logic is a critical step. It's one that really sets you for success if you get it right. However, it's key to note that there is no one size fits all. So what we're saying is merely just a guide. For this learned module, we'll be looking at a scuba shop's service department, from zoning in on three main personas: the sales team, the service team, as well as the general manager. With these personas in mind, let's just make up a scenario where we have four people in sales, two in the service team, and one general manager. So, what type of power app would each of these personas need? And this is where it becomes challenging because there can be multiple answers to these questions. But before we come up with the design, let's briefly talk through what each of these personas have to do. The sales team is responsible for selling dive gear. They connect gear to the customer and capture serial numbers. Then they then identify cross sell and upsell opportunities and discuss these with the customer. So their main task is is to complete a new sale and then identify other opportunities. They complete these tasks online by using their desktop PC or on their mobile device. For the sales team, we could say that they need to be able to keep track of a lot of data when dealing with clients, and having a model driven app that is rooted in data coupled with the capabilities of integrating data driven action based connectors such as Outlook or Office 365 would benefit this team. Of course, they could track clients, they could track which member of the team last interacted with their clients. But there are so many reasons that we can weed out as to why this team would rather go with a model driven app based on what Someleze has said. Now, could the same type of app work with the service team? Well, let's see. The service team fills in a service request form. They then inspect new dive gear or capture pictures of service gear and deliveries to customers. So their main task is to capture a new service request and complete service requests for new and existing dive gear. They complete these tasks online or on their cell phones. For this one, I would lean more towards a Canvas app because it seems like this team is more mobile. They move a lot more. Plus, Canvas app has components like a camera to take pictures of the service gear, or functions to include digital signatures for when new gear comes in. So with all of these features, the service team can do their work while on the go. Maybe a model driven app might have worked, but I feel that with a Canvas app, you can really push the envelope on what's possible. In the case of a general manager, they perform weekly resource allocations based on new chances and review sales and service quotas based on work completed and sales which are closed. The main task is allocation and sales and service performance reporting. They complete these tasks online and on the desktop. For this one, I think a model driven app would be the way to go since they are accessing data from both the service and the sales teams. And a bit of integration here with Power BI and other technologies for the reporting side. So overall, we're looking at a hybrid implement where it leverages multiple apps depending on the persona and the use case. And once we have that idea on the types of apps to build and the placement of logic, that's when we can start thinking about securing our data.
Before we can actually move on to that, Homo, I just want to actually get a feel of this entire part where we actually think about the importance of having the placement of logic well thought out, because obviously from what you just explained to us, it's not just a off the bat or willy-nilly something that you can actually do when it comes to developing your solution using Power Apps, because obviously I can just wake up and say I have my data, I'll just build a Canvas app. And from the explanation that you actually giving me is that if I understand the logic, then it'll actually help me to have a much more better understanding, a better ability on how I can be able to determine the type of app to make, whether is it a model driven app or Canvas apps. And I also note that the service team will be very biased, just like ours, and choose Canvas apps because obviously they will be able to add all of those controls that they actually need on the go.
No, no, yeah, this is true. But the thing is, it's not just about understanding the logic. It's also about knowing what the different types of apps are and how they can benefit your use case, right? So, one, you need to really understand what your business does. And then, two, you need to try and see if I were to implement a Power App, how would that benefit me? And then you can think about the logic and the type of app to use. So there's so many different parts in this whole planning phase before you actually start the building.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot to think about, and hopefully everyone else will be able to think about it properly and implement what they actually need. And when it comes to applications, and you build mobile applications, even with the Power Platform or Power Apps itself, you need to secure data, just like Homelemo has actually mentioned. So in this case, how do you secure data within Power Apps? So in this case, this is where you know that you've determined what data structures to use and which type of app to build. So your next step is to actually consider how to make your data more secure. So there's different layers actually when it comes to Power Apps and securing data. First up, we actually have the app level security where it restricts the access to the app. And obviously, app level security doesn't protect your data storage location. How your data is secured will vary based on the capabilities of your data sources. So in this case, if you use Dataverse and if you use SharePoint, it depends on that. So when you share your application, you'd have to ensure that your users also have the appropriate access to the underlying data. So that's something you're probably going to see during this session that we're doing on how you can be able to share your application and you can share access to your application to your users. Then next up, you would have form level security. So this one actually speaks more when you are using Dataverse as your data source within your applications, whether it's a model-driven app or a Canvas application. So mostly for model-driven apps, form level security allows you to allow specific security groups to access specific forms, and it's useful if you want to restrict how people enter or view data by their job role. So it's not just you securing your form within your Dataverse table, but it's much more than that. You are looking at the role that a person has within your company or within your organization and what kind of data can they be able to access, or what kind of forms within your database table can they be able to access. Then, last but not least, you actually have level security. So this one is actually my favorite. Record level security is a type of security where you can assign access to certain records. So imagine that currently have a sheet in an Excel workbook. Record level security allows you to set up security for each individual row. So, in terms of data being within the same table, you can be able to secure specific data within specific rows based off of whatever requirements that you actually have. Okay, that is basically how you can be able to do securing your data within Power Apps and model driven apps, obviously. Enough talk though, because I know mostly for this session, how as we have gotten to this point, it's been just information. So to keep track of you guys that are watching our session, are you guys paying attention to the things that we're saying? We actually have a knowledge check for you. Khomelemo, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Let's get in and do our first knowledge check. Like he has said, we have been talking for quite a while, but that's because there is so much that goes into the initial design and planning phase. So to refresh our memory, let's go ahead and do this knowledge check. So the question is on screen. Let me go ahead and read it. What is the objective of a business process chart, right? Is it A, to sketch the screens that are included in the app? B, to identify the tasks that are required in an app? Or C, to list the data sources to be included in the app? So we need to think about this one carefully when thinking about a business process. Again, like I said earlier, you need to find a way to first you need to understand what your business does. You need to identify the business problem, and then you need to think about the various steps, and I'm choosing my words very very carefully here. You need to think about the various steps in that process for you to solve that problem. So Meleze, what do you think?
Judging from how you are trying to explain everything to us, I think obviously when it comes to business process flow chart, you need to
Mhm.
understand, like you said, the steps that actually come into play when it comes to your solution or when it comes to your
Right.
application. Um, let me see.
We have 12 votes for MB, so that's quite a lot of people for the second option. Are they
I'm,
correct?
I am not taking anyone's answers. Just know I am thinking just like you guys. I am putting my bet on B.
Right. It for sure is B. And the reason why is that when you've, like I said, right, when you have looked at the business problem that you want to solve and you've analyzed those steps, this is where you identify these steps that you will need to solve with your Power App. So B is correct.
That's awesome.
Let's go for the next one. Let's see what do we have. Question two, and again, the links are being put into chat for you guys to vote, but feel free to sound off in chat as well. Which of the following tasks are recommended before a data migration? A, sorry, to secure your data. B, determine the server location. Hmm. Or C, clean up your data. So Meleze, what do you think about this one?
You
I don't want to
mentioned
give
this
away too
earlier
many clues.
yeah, you mentioned this earlier on when we just started off with this session,
Yeah.
and I am going to obviously place my bet on C because obviously I already spoke about securing your data, and I don't want to give any other clues around that, but my bets are on C. Hopefully, everyone else is not taking my answer and thinking it's the correct one. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know.
We have 85 percent of people voting for MC. So I think we should show them the answer, which is indeed C. Clean up your data. This is an essential step because when you have removed, duplicate records and made sure that you've accessed the latest data, only then can you do a data migration. So, yes, the answer is C for sure. Question three. Let's have it. Question three says, which of the following security levels allows you to secure a specific column within a table? A, field level security. B, record level security. Or C, app level security. There are keywords in that question that match very well with the answer here. What do you say, Someleze?
I am just going to allow everyone else to actually put in their answers because I just spoke about this just a few slides ago, and I think I know the answer and I don't want to reveal it too soon. But obviously, I can share my thoughts. What are your thoughts first, Homolemo, before we actually go on and share my answer on that?
Hey, no, it's like you had said, we did speak about this very, very recently. And I had mentioned that the question actually reveals quite a number of clues. But this is only if you understand the various terms that we use within the Power Platform. So you have things like table, or you have things like column, right? Here we are looking to find the specific column within a table. So if you know the syllable for column, it's very, very easy. But if you listen to what Sumeleze had to say, I think you would have found the correct answer, which is
Field level security. I
A.
mean, field and column actually go together. Those are terms that we actually use within the Power Platform that are interchangeable when it comes to columns and fields. Whenever you are building something or you are building an application, and most of
Correct.
the time you are thinking about what data you want to showcase on the interface or you want your users to have access to, you don't necessarily call it a column most of the time. The only time you use column is when you are adding columns to your table and you're creating a table. But when you
Mhm.
are trying to control the access of what data do your users actually have to see or to interact with, this is a trick I use when I build Power Apps as well. So in this case, I normally call them as fields. Which field do I want to showcase to the users, or which field do I have a business rule for, and so forth?
Correct. And with that, I think it's time for us to move on to the next section.
Yeah, before we move on to the next section, actually, I just want us to come back a little bit and just appreciate that we actually went through the few steps or the few learning objectives that we mentioned earlier on. We spoke about how you can analyze the different tasks to be done when using the application. That means cleaning your data. It was actually in the knowledge check itself. Also, we spoke about how you can prepare the specifications and designs of your application. This is when you are determining the which kind or which type of application are you building. Is it a model driven app or is it a canvas app? And last but not least, we spoke about how you can decide what user experience will your application be. So, with that, we don't want to waste any more time. We actually want to move on to the next module, which is make your application like a pro. And in this case, Homo Lemo would actually show us how to do this. Homo?
Right. So what we have here is the Power Apps homepage, and you can access this by going to make.powerapps.com and log in with a email that has a valid Power Apps license, and then this is how you will access this. So this, I already have a developer environment enabled here. We did not cover that in this module, but maybe if you have time for questions, I will be able to tell you how to do just that. So the first part, or the first section of this next of this unit is really about speaking about data and data within the Power Platform, more specifically Power Apps. So let us take a look. I do believe my screen is visible. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
If we go into the left hand side here, we have a option there called Dataverse, and this is where one of the Power Platform's main data sources is situated. Dataverse, it is the data source of choice. It's a secure data app platform used for a lot of Power Apps worldwide. And in here, we have the tables option. And I'm just going to click in there. And I'm just going to show you real quick what that actually looks like. When you have configured a developer in an environment, you will see a bunch of standard tables. These are standard tables that you will find across Microsoft Business apps. You know, tables like the account, where you can store things like information for businesses, or you have tables like contact. This sometimes stores like people. It stores user data. These are just standard tables that are prevalent across industries, across businesses. And for the specific purpose, you might want to create a app that utilizes some of these tables. But sometimes you might find that the specific table that you're looking for is not in this very long list. And if you don't have one, then what can we do from there? So, Meleze?
Yeah. So if you don't have a specific table that you can find on the standard tables that are available to you on Dataverse, you can actually create your own custom table, in which obviously Homolemo would be showing us just right now. A custom table is basically a table that you create based off of your specific needs, or based off of your specific requirements that are not met by the standard tables. You want your specific columns, you want a specific use case around that custom table. So you would need to create a new table. Obviously, you would need to have admin rights or specific rights within that specific environment to be able to add your own custom table.
Sure. So, taking us back to what we discussed earlier with the Dive Center app, we want to find some sort of table that represents dive gear, or maybe some sort of customer assets, type of table. You can just quickly scroll. I'm not really seeing something that matches what I would specifically want. So naturally, I would just go on to new table. But before we do that, I just want to minimize this, and we're going to go to the solutions tab at the bottom of the left hand side. And in the solutions tab, I'm going to click on new solution. So I'm not going to describe exactly what I'm doing right now, but let's just create this, and then we'll talk about this a bit later on. Right now, we're focusing on the data side of the app. So let's configure a solution. We'll call this the Dive Center app solution. Let's select a publisher. Again, all of this will be touched on a bit later on. We will also leave the version number, and let's click on create. So while this is creating here and it's actually about to finish, a solution is basically a container that helps you to transport apps and components from one place to another. As I've mentioned earlier on, this is my developer in environments. I might make all of my apps here, and then once I am ready to test those or push them to a production, then I will be able to export these apps and then import that into another environment. So my solution has been created. Let's go ahead and create a table. If we go over here to the new tab, I'm able to see all of these different things that I can then add to my solution, right? I have apps, so I have Canvas app or a model driven app, or I can add automation, and this is something that we will touch on later on. Or I can add a chatbot or a bunch of dashboards, or various like security profiles. We also have other things that we might want to configure our solution with. But right now we'll be creating a table, and with that table we have a few properties here that Someleze will take us through.
Yeah. So when you create properties within Dataverse, obviously, the first thing that you also need to note, one of which actually works like how you have standard tables, you also have standard columns. So those standard columns would be the created by column or the created column, and all sorts of columns that obviously that are basically common to each and every single organization or table that you would need to use. And then
Right.
in this case, this is when you'd be adding your own, let's say, custom column around what your specific requirements are. So I think first up, we can actually look at the service request column so that we can be able to keep track of the service requests within the Dive Center app.
Sure. So this is our new table. Let's go ahead and call this service request, right? That's the display name, and as you can see, our plural name, it adds AMS. If we had maybe called this service request gear, it might not be it might be a bit weird to call that gear. So you can edit that, but that plural name is just the plural of the actual table. I can add a description to our table as well. So in this case, I can just say this will capture service requests, right? And then if you see, we also have some advanced options here. There are a number of options that we might want to choose here to configure our table. For example, the ownership. We might want to add other policies that shape the data that will be added into this table. One such option would be the attachments checkbox. In this case, right, we know that the service team takes pictures of incoming gear. So to enable that feature in this table is me thinking about what that team will be using the specific table for. If you go then to the right hand side, we have a primary column. We're just going to rename this to the service member name, right? This will be the name of the person who has um, added this or has inputted the specific request. So let's go ahead and save that new table. Once that table has been created, we can then go ahead and add additional columns. So some of the columns that we'd like to add is, the type of gear that we will be using in this dive shop, or the customer email we'll be giving this gear to, as well as a completion date where we want to know when that customer will be bringing in that gear to be serviced once more. So now we can see in our solution table here that our table has been created. Let's go ahead and add additional columns. So Someleze, for gear, what type of data type would we be choosing for that?
Yeah. So in this case, if we are talking about gear, we're talking about different types of gear that would be available to whoever is actually requesting the service within the Dive Center app. So in this case, when I talk about options, the first thing I think about is a choice column. So the data type for our column will be a choice column so that we can be able to have a list of options. So it'll be a choice column, then you choose choice just like Homolemo has actually chose so that you can be able to list the different options that are available for the types of gears that you would have within your service team.
Okay. So then, is this how I would add different types of choices, or in this case, the types of gear in our dive shop?
Yeah, so you would then just click on new choice and then you would add the different choices that would be available within the Dive Center app that you want. One thing to note though is that most of the time, whenever you're trying to add a new choice column, it will try to, for an example, sync it to an already existing choice column or what we call it as a global column. In that case, you won't be able to specify those choices that you want here, but it will utilize already existing choice columns or choice column table that is within Dataverse. But to have full control over the options that are available or the choices that you want users to interact with, you would then not choose to link it with a global choice column, but instead you would add your own choices within that column.
Right. So let's save those gear choices that we have here. That will take a second or two to save up. And then once that is done, we'll be adding the customer email and the completion date type. So these will be different data types, and we're just showing you how to use different data types inside of a table for when you go ahead and create your own table. So let's go ahead
So,
and choose.
Homalemo, before you carry on, first of all, you have gear items. So I just want to explain a little bit of what people would see. So in a case where you are doing it differently from us, if you hadn't checked that yes recommended, which is sync with global choice, you would then need to say no, which you would create your own choices that are within that specific column. So it's a bit different from how Homolemo has done it on the screen. So don't fret when you do it differently or you see someone else doing it differently. You can create your own local choice column that would have your own local types of gears or whichever name you gave your specific column.
Right. So let's go ahead and save that. And then once that is saved, we will then add customer email. So this will be a text data type. However, we will be formatting this a bit differently. How exactly will we be formatting it?
Yeah, so the format is actually in the name itself. As much as it's a text column, we actually want the users to input their email. So we want it to be formatted around their email. So if you choose the format there and you choose email, that's how you can be able to format that text column into an email so that they don't just input their first name and then leave it be. You want the application or the field itself to actually scream at the user and tell them that this is not an email. This is just a first name. We want an email that has an at and a dot com or dot co dot za or whichever domain they have for a specific email.
Right. And then let's add one more column. This will be the completion date, I believe. Yes, the completion date. This will be the date where the customer will have to bring their gear back to be serviced. What type of data type should we add here?
Again, even with this one, it's actually on the name itself. The data type is date and time because we want to know the date and the time that the save service request was completed.
Correct. So let's go ahead and save that. So what we've done uh, in this module is that we've added a table as well as added four column with four different data types. We have the service member name, which is a text type. We have the gear items, which are choices, customer email, which is a email text type, as well as the completion date, which is date and time. Now, with our table, I think it's time for us to go back and speak about what solutions are. So, if you can just have a look on the screen and just look at the solution that we created, the Dive Center app. Like I said earlier, right, solutions are used as a container to help you transport apps and components from one environment to a another one, to apply a set of custom apps to your existing apps. A solution can contain one or more apps or other things like automations, chatbots, dashboards, sitemaps, tables, and so much more. So if you open up the solutions page, and we can go through the different elements when adding your solution. So let's go ahead. Let's just revisit this format. The solution name is just simple that just simply that it's the name of the solution that you are building. Most people would name this after the actual app that they are building, or the type of app that they are building. It really, there is no like set format for a specific name. It's just a name that you will know that contains a certain amount of components. And then we have the publisher. Now, with your publisher here, this is basically as it is someone who has created or is the author of this specific solution. With a publisher, this is important because it determines the prefix of elements inside of that solution. So you can create publishers, you can create it for groups, you can create them for people. This is just to let others know who exactly created that specific solution. So when I said that it determines your prefix for the Dive Center app, the publisher that I created was the CDS default. If I go back into Dataverse and I go into tables and I look at all these pre-made tables and look at their name, they don't really have any prefix, right? Because they weren't specifically made by a specific publisher, right? And if I go into custom, you can see if I can just find the service request table that I have here. There's that CR91F prefix, which belongs to the CDS publisher. So if I were to create a publisher called Homo and prefix that as GMO, right? Every element or component inside of Power Apps that I make will be prefixed with GMO, so people can know about the things that I have built. When you've built your apps and you've added all of your flows and all of your chatbots and such, you can then export it. So for example, the same solution that I have here, I just click on that and I click on export, right? When I click on export, you see, it just tells me a couple of things to do before I export it. One is to publish all of my changes to make sure that I have the latest and the greatest versions of whatever is inside of that, or I can check for issues. So this is basically a way for Power Apps to check if everything in that package is, is running fine, everything talks to each other well, and there's no issues before I export it to another environment. So then I click next, and in this space here, you will notice that the version number, they've added a 1 to the specific version number that I added earlier on. This allows me to update a previous version of the same solution that I have in another in environment. So for example, if I'm developing on version 1.0.0, but I want to test 1.0.1, then I would have to update my version number to 2 so that the 2 can update that 1 so that everyone has the same version of the apps that I'm building on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Homo, I actually noticed something there. There is managed and unmanaged. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the differences between a managed solution and an unmanaged solution?
Sure. And an unmanaged solution. So let me actually just cancel this process. And if you look at the one that we made, and we go onto the managed column, there's actually a no. This means that there are still apps and flows and the all the different things that we add. These things are still being um, I'm still being customized. Someone is still working on them, right? This is usually when you create one from scratch, it'll be unmanaged because it is not in a test or a dev box. This is in the dev box where I'm building, I'm adding data, I'm doing all sorts of things to customize. Only when I export this and import it into my my test or my dev, only then it becomes managed, right? When it is managed, that means it is locked. So the people who are testing, the people who are using this in the production box, they cannot edit any of the components in any way. So that is the main difference between a managed or a unmanaged. That is why when I do go and export, it recommends that I change this to a managed solution, unless I am exporting this to another dev. There are companies that have more than one dev box. So they are developing here, then it gets taken to another team and then another team. So I can leave that as unmanaged. But if I want to test this app, if I want to actually use it at a production level, it is wise to have that managed so that it locks everything so it cannot be customized. So with that, in the when I
Actually,
click it
seeing
as
people who have um, those different kinds of environments when it comes to dev environments, prod environments, and all of those things. And it's actually the professional developers most of the time. And of course, whenever I talk about the Power Platform, I lose a lot of the audience when it comes to professional developers, and they always talk about their production environment, their test environment, and their dev environment. And it's actually awesome to see that when you come with managed solutions and unmanaged solutions, it actually touches of a little bit of those environments in terms of test, production, and dev. So I can see where the synergy between citizen developers and professional developers comes into play. And obviously, when it comes to the solutions and how they can be able to manage them, they can be able to put them in these different environments, and you can be able to make all of those changes, just like how you were mentioning earlier on when it comes to moving it or exporting your solution as a managed solution, because obviously you're ready to publish everything to your customers, your clients, or whoever it is going to be consuming that solution, as compared to moving it or exporting as an unmanaged solution where you're still going to customize it in your developer environment or in your test environment or something like that.
Yeah, sure. The application lifecycle management is not just for pro devs. It's also for local devs. It's for everyone who is building any app in any business. And these types of systems are crucial. And I think it also makes the IT teams happy, the IT pros happy when we have systems like these to manage the different versions. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
I'm gonna go ahead and export this. And while that exports, because this can take any time from a few seconds to a couple of minutes, and it really depends on how many attributes you have inside of it. While that exports, maybe we can get a few questions from chats. If people want to like ask us about what we have spoken uh, during this module, please feel free to ask any questions in chats, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. So Meleze, you have a session on the .NET conference, which is taking place, I think, starting from today.
Yeah. So I had a session at the .NET conference, obviously within the student zone, where I was talking about how to actually do mobile development for cross-platform devices using .NET MAUI, obviously. And that session obviously was being streamed a few hours ago. You can still find that session at aka.ms/ studentzone.net conf ist, or if you are in the United States, you can go to the same link, but you can say dash est in that case. And again, the .NET conference is going on today, so be sure to not miss out that wonderful content. So when I say today, it depends on which part of the world you are in. So if you're in the United States, it can still be yesterday for me. So be mindful of that.
Yeah, we have a question about exporting Power Apps to .NET and creating Power Apps in a IDE. What I do know is that if you're a .NET developer, you are able to do a bunch of things for the for the Power Platform. One of them being creating custom visual components, whereas maybe the Power Platform lacks in a certain visual elements that you want to build. I mean, you want to use in your Power App. As a pro dev or high coder, you are able to build out those components from scratch and have low code devs use them as if they were out of the box. Another way that pro devs can contribute to the low code space or work together with low code devs is by creating custom APIs and wrapping them as connectors for local devs. So local devs can access data that the 700 plus connectors doesn't have access to. Maybe you have a specific system that's hosted on premises and you want to write a API that talks to that. You can host it up on Azure and then have that managed inside of Azure API management and wrap it as a connector for local devs. So there are many ways in which .NET devs or even other pro devs can contribute or play with the Power Platform. Someone is asking, how many apps do I need to have built to be considered a citizen dev? If I were to give my answer to that, if you go into Power Apps and you create a app and add a text and a button, you're a citizen dev. You're not a very experienced one, but you definitely are a citizen dev. We are all at varying levels. So as long as you get started, you are welcome into the low code family.
Yeah, I have the same sentiments as well. You just create a blank screen, you add a button or you add a label, you're already a citizen developer. And what I love about the Power Platform or Power Apps, you can just save your work, publish it, and share it with anyone you want to share it with. And you are a citizen developer because at the end of the day, you have that mobile application for you and it has that label and it has that button for you. And if you want to obviously extend your skills and you want to work with professional developers as well, the stuff that Homo just mentioned a few minutes ago actually come into play. And you can basically do quite a lot with the Power Platform if you're a citizen developer working with a professional developer and also a professional developer working with a citizen developer.
That is correct. So with that, our solution has exported. Once it gets to this step, all you have to do is click on that download button, and it will download as a zipped file. And then all you'd have to do is you then import that into another in environment. So from here, I think the next step is to build a Canvas app.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to see this.
Let's go into our solution here and let's remove that. You see, we have our table, our choice. Let's go ahead and add a app. So new app, Canvas app.
Yeah.
Let's click on that. So that will just load up our screen for us to set up our app. Are we starting an app from blank? What do you think, Someles?
Yeah, we can start an app from blank because what happens when you build an application or a Power App within a solution, you would just have the option of starting your Canvas app from blank, and then you won't be able to start accessing, like for an example, that other option where you can start from a data source. So those are other things that you can note. While Homo Lemo is filling in those details around the application, another part that I can explain is that within solutions, if you had built your application outside a solution, you can be able to import it into that solution so that you can be able to do whatever you need to do with that solution. So you don't just only create the application, you can also import it into a solution if you would like.
Right. So those two attributes that I had, it was just asking for app name and for the format. So I chose phone, and the other one was tablet. That is not the only place you can change those. So you can change the name of your app anytime. You can change the format of your app, even having different sizes for different tablets, phones, PC screens. So it's completely up to you how you'd want to configure your app. So yeah, we have a blank canvas app. Uh, what do you think? We should add maybe a label. We should add a button, a form. Quite a number of things we can do. Is maybe what we can do is for starters is we can bring in our data, right? So we're gonna just click on this data pane here. Let's go ahead and add data. So the table we are looking for is the table that we created earlier on, service requests. That will then bring that table into the Dataverse right there. And then let's get started with the actual app building. So Meleze, what do you want me to put into this app?
Yeah. So for me, I would normally prefer to first be able to interface our fields. Remember, I mentioned earlier on when we were doing the knowledge check, whenever I build applications and I build an app within Power Apps, I don't use columns as the word for the things that I need to add on the screen to interface the data, but I just use the word fields. So how we can do that, we can add a form, Homo.
We will
So
add a
you will go
form.
to insert, or yes, you go insert, then it will be
Sorry.
input.
Let's just search.
Yep. And
We're
then edit
doing a
form.
edit or a display form.
We should do an edit form because we want to allow our users to be able to edit the application or to edit the data within the application. Then the next step would be connecting our form to the data source. So obviously, Homolemo has brought in the data source or the data from Dataverse into our application. We just need to connect the form to that data source. So if Homo would go to the properties pane and on data source would choose service requests, you can see it says in your app, and then that would load up and will show the different fields that are available there. So in our case, we don't necessarily want to see the created on field. So how do we control the fields that are being shown within our form? What we can do while we have the form clicked on or selected, we then go back to the properties pane on the right hand side of the screen. And then on the second property, which is fields, we click on edit fields, and then you would first remove the created on field. So you would have three dots there and you say remove, and then you click on add field at the top. So our fields are completion date, gear, and customer email because obviously service member name is already there. It was automatically picked up. So that's what happens when obviously you rename the name column within your Dataverse table to whatever column name you want it to be. Or even if you leave it as is, it will always be picked up by Power Apps and it will interface on your application. So we have our fields added in, so we can close that pane and then we can just scratch out or stretch out our form. And then, yeah, what would be next in this case, I guess, would be adding a button on us saving the information back to the data source. So we insert and we add a button. And then I think that button, its name would be save. We can change the text from button to save by using the properties. pane, or you can use the formula bar that is at the top of the screen. Right. But that's not where we stop, actually. You would need to specify how you save this information back to your data source. You can't just have a button that is just sitting there and it's doing nothing, and people clicking on it, it's not doing anything. So, how can you set this up? So, again, depending on people's preferences, you can either use the properties pane and go to the advanced tab, or you can use the column pane at the top where you can just interchange the properties that you're using, just like how Homolemo is doing on the screen. So you look for the on select property. Currently, it's set to false. That means it does nothing. So how do we save the data back to our data source? I normally use different functions within Power Apps, and normally my favorite is Patch, because I control what kind of data I'm sending back to my data source. That would depend on which data source I'm using. But in this case, we're just using a form that is connected directly back to our data source within Dataverse. So we will use the submit form function, and then within the parentheses of that function, we would specify the name of our form, then close the parentheses, and basically it will allow us to save the data back to the data source. Right. The form now is actually currently on edit mode, so you need to change it. Instead of it being on edit mode, what does this mean first before we carry on that? This actually means when this application runs, it'll look for a field or record to edit within your data source. But let's say you don't have anything within your data source, so there will be nothing, but you want your form to be automatically on new so that people can be able to submit information. So on default mode, you will change it from edit to new. And then I think that is all that you would need. And obviously, you can add more buttons within the screen to navigate back and forth if you have more screens here. So, Homolemo, do you feel like we can add another screen, or do you feel like we can add another button and connect it to that other screen?
Yeah, we could do that quite quickly here. What I would do is, first of all, I just like having something with uh, with a bit of a format here. So what I've done is I've added a text label, and what I'll do with that label is I will just let's censor the text. Let's actually change the text white, which makes our thing disappear. Then we need to just change our background color to blue. And then just so we have some sort of it's like, so we have like a format there.
Personalization and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we can just stop there at hello there, or we can add something like this, right? I'm making use of Power FX, a very simple formula. So this is Power FX, which is a low code language for the Power platform. I'm using email. That's quite long. So let's change that to full name. We might want to add a space there just to make that good, right? That will just get the person who is logged in, right? Service member as well, service member name. You can customize it so it always has the service member's name pre-filled in, but let's not do that for now. I think the app as it is, just for the purposes of the demo, is quite where we need it to be. This will be a simple app where the service team member will input any service request that comes in. Of course, we would add other features like a camera to take a picture of the different gear and so many other things. But I think we should actually move on. Um, so with this Power App that we have, I'm just gonna save it. That's over here. And then I think, do we have time to quickly add a automation? What do you think?
Yeah, we can definitely add in automation there just to showcase what are the capabilities that you can add onto your application based off of whatever requirements that you have, and you're extending it using Power Automate in this case.
So let's do that very quickly. Again, we are in our Dive Center app solution. Here we see all the elements that we have. Let's go to new, let's go to automation, and we have a cloud flow, which is automated instance or a schedule flow. We have a desktop flow process. What do all of these things mean?
So, an automated cloud flow, and instant and scheduled, and obviously desktop flow. This basically means the triggers of your Power Automate flow in this case. Automated is in the name itself actually means that your Power Automate flow would run automatically based off of a specific condition that is met. Instant is based off of if a specific user presses a button on your application or your Power Automate for mobile, then that Power Automate flow would run. And then scheduled would then be a Power Automate flow that runs based off of a schedule that you give it, whether you want it to run every single second, every single hour, every single day, or every single week, or every single month, depending on what you want to do. And then desktop flows basically are for your desktop processes that you want to actually add onto your solution, an entire Power Platform solution that you are adding into this. So in our case, we want to actually use an automated cloud flow. What does that mean? We actually want to pick up whatever changes that happen in our Dataverse table, then be able to do something like sending an email to whoever added a new record or whoever submitted a new service request. So, what we want to do and how we are going to do that is that we'll choose automated cloud flow just like Homolemo has, and give it a flow name, and then you can see it actually asks us to choose a flows trigger. So you have different triggers that are available to you that would be for an automated cloud flow. But in this case, we're looking for Dataverse when a new row is added um, within our Dataverse table. And obviously, this depends on, do you want it to look at when a new row is added? Do you want it to look at when a new row is modified? So, Homelemo, would you be able to walk us through in terms of the trigger and the stuff that are required from us?
Sure. So let's look at this trigger. And like he has said, we need this to activate when a new service request has been added. So the change type here will be, that's just loading up, will be added, right? The table name, what table are we looking at here? For us, that table is the table that we created. I believe I can search. Yes, I can service request. There you go. And then the scope over there, we'll just keep that to business unit there. So are we good to add a new step?
Yeah,
Okay, let's go ahead and add a new step there.
right. So the new step that we want to add, basically just a simple Power Automate flow. Whenever a new service request is added, we just want to send an email to whoever requested that service. So how can we do that? On that, we can search for send an email, and we will choose Office 365 Outlook and choose send an email V2. This will then try, if you are using it for the first time, it will try to create a connection to Office 365 Outlook based off of your account. And then right after that, you can be able to use it just like how it is. And then, Homolemo, would you like to walk us through on the different stuff? Obviously, everyone knows that you need to have a tool, which is the recipient, the subject, and a body of that specific email. But with Power Automate, you can actually control it on how you can achieve all of those things.
Right. So for the two, obviously you want this email to go to the customer that was added. So what we can do is that we can add dynamic content, right? So if you click on this here, you'll see we have the record already showing up because we added that email data type. So it'll add to whichever customer email was added to that record. So it's pulling whatever value that has been added. You can then go here and say, let's go new service request, right? You can add in a subject there. You can customize that. Maybe you can say by, and then again, you add the dynamic content there by service member name. And then in the email, you can then write the body of the email there. Hi, and then you we have just filled in a new service request. Please return by, oops, misspelled return. Please return by, and then we have
The completion date.
right. So that's how you can use that data from Dataverse in this very basic flow. Right. So with that, we have created a solution, and in that we've added a table, we've added a Canvas app, as well as a Power Automate flow. And you can add all of those different elements into this one place and export it and import it anywhere you want it for whatever use case you have identified. So with that, what do you think? Do you have time for a very, very quick knowledge check?
Yeah, we do. So we have a last knowledge check for you guys so that we can check if you guys were following along with what we were doing. And obviously, the questions have already been posted for you guys to send through your answers. So the first question is checking which of the following options is a prerequisite for creating a model driven app. A is a data connectors, B, Microsoft Dataverse database, or C, Power Apps template. So we alluded to this before we did the demo. So obviously, I hope you guys, your memory is still fresh. Homolemo, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a bit of a tricky one. Um, because I remember saying that a Power App can use any type of data source. However, there was a there was a exception for model driven. So I'm leaning more towards B. What do you think?
Yeah, I also think it's actually B. And if we can check the correct answer right now, it is B,
That
which
is
is
B.
Microsoft Dataverse database. The reason is because model driven apps rely on Dataverse for data storage. So obviously, this option is a prerequisite for creating a model driven app. I actually mentioned this few slides ago when we were just going through the different ways of determining what type of application that you are going to use, whether it's a model driven app or a Canvas app when you are building. So the next question is which one of the following selections is a type of Power Automate flow? Is it A, delay, B, real time, C, cloud? We just mentioned this just a few minutes ago. So what do you guys think? Komolemo, you are creating the Power Automate flow. Can you give us the answer?
Sure. The answer is cloud. And I think for the sake of time, let's just swiftly move along to the next question.
Yeah.
Um,
The next question is actually checking which one of the following selections can you include in a managed solution? Is it A, processes, B, data, C, user licenses? So, Homolemo, your thoughts?
Definitely A, processes. These are one of the components like apps and flows that you can add to a solution.
Yeah, the correct answer is processes in this case. So a solution can contain one or more apps and other components such as site maps, tables, processes, web resources, choices, flows, and many more. So obviously we're not going to focus too much on this. I just want to know on Homo on the things or the different things that we actually covered through the demo.
Yep. Yeah. So we went through the process of setting up your initial data for the app, and then we focused on how to create a solution or a container for all the different parts of your app. We then did a Canvas app as well as set up some automation. Um, and unfortunately, because of time, we did not manage to do any of the securing of the app parts. But rest assured, it's all in the Microsoft Learn module, and you will be able to go through that.
Yeah, speaking of the Microsoft Learn module, again, this Learn Live session was based off of the two Microsoft Learn modules that are part of the Make Your App Like a Pro series within Microsoft Learn. So you can be able to complete the interactive learning exercises, watch videos, and practice, and also apply your new skills for those specific Learn modules. You can scan the QR code on the screen and it will take you to that learn module, or you can use the links that are posted on the screen itself. Right. Again, this was part of a series. So, what I would ask you to do from Homolemo, myself, and the moderators is to actually rewatch the entire series, where obviously it's for the post Ignite sessions around the Power Platform and Power Apps. So, you can join us for a medley of modules following Microsoft Ignite, which was this year, and you'll have a chance to learn live. Again, ask questions from your presenters and gain knowledge to help you complete cloud skills challenges and certifications. With that, I would like to thank Homolemo for being such an amazing co-presenter and would like to thank everyone else for being up with us at this time of the hour in South Africa. It's very late and I would like to say goodbye. Homo, any last words?
Yeah, cheers. And thank you guys so much for being with us. Our Twitter handles are on screen. So if you want to connect with us and ask us questions, please feel free to do so. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.